Greetings metalheads, George here from No Nonsense Metal Reviews, and I'm back once again with another collection update. Today I'm going to be showing off a, well actually I was going to say recently picked up. To be honest, I've had this little assortment of tapes sitting on the side, been steadily working through those over the last couple of months actually. It's from my last order from Dissonant Tapes, a brilliant US based label and distro. So not really all that recent. A couple of months ago picked these tapes up. So some of them might not still be available, but definitely worth checking out Dissonant Tapes' web store because it's freaking great. Loaded with awesome stuff and really reasonably priced actually. So it is all cassette, but I have got a mix of death metal, I've got some black metal thrown in, got some good old heavy metal as well. Just for a little bit of variety. We've got 11 tapes in total, so let's get started. In fact, we'll start off with those heavy metal releases. In particular, one I want to talk about is a band I have talked about previously, the mighty Visigoth, from, I believe they're from Salt Lake City, Utah, if memory serves. Visigoth are a more modern band. They are a heavy metal band, very much inspired clearly by the genre greats of good old heavy metal. You know, Iron Maiden, Priest, that's all clearly there. But there's also clearly a big impression from bands like Manila Road, for example. Even maybe Candlemass in there at times. You kind of get that epic heavy metal thing going on as well. But this is a band that you absolutely need to hear. And in fact, Visigoth were one of the first bands you need to hear recommendations that I did hear on the channel years ago. I'll pop a little link so you can check that out if you're interested. And actually, I don't think they've done any new full-length albums since that review. There has been some time, but this is the debut, The Revenant King. And it is a bloody good album. Visigoth are a brilliant, brilliant band. It's very epic heavy metal. It's, you know, packed full of hooks, incredible riffs, really, really soaring stuff. This particular tape issue, so the album was actually released through Metal Blade Records, but this tape variant comes from Nameless Grave. A label I'm not all that familiar with, but it's a really nice package. So I've got a nice gold tape shell. And even though I've got this on CD, there was no question. I was going to pick this up. I love my tapes. I love that analog sound and style. And this band is brilliant. Incredible vocals, courtesy of Jake Rogers, in fact. A really talented vocalist. He's got tons of power in those lungs. Great album. Definitely one to check out if you like epic heavy metal, if you like the good old-fashioned stuff. We've got some particularly incredible tracks that are instantly memorable here. Tracks like Dungeon Master, Mammoth Rider, Iron Brotherhood. It's absolute sing-along, freaking brilliant stuff. So we've got Visigoth from Utah, USA. I've also got another Nameless Grave release, and this, I must admit, was a classic case of I've heard the name, haven't checked the actual material, but I'm going to take a chance on it. I mean, just look at that artwork. That's enough to entice you. But this is Morgul Blade with Heavy Metal Wraith, or Wraiths. Clearly inspired by Tolkien and Middle-earth, all that good stuff. This is heavy metal. I would say there's almost a little bit of a blackened vibe there at times, certainly in the vocals. But it's really good stuff. Nice gold shell again. So we've got side heavy metal and side wraiths. Nameless Grave, as I say, this is still one that I'm getting used to. I've listened to it a good sort of maybe 5 or 6 times now, and it's a solid album. You know, there's some cracking guitar work there, great vocals, although on the harsher side. There's some real interesting stuff in there, particularly like Beneath the Black Sail's a great one, as is the title track. Frostworm Cavalry. You've got a kind of melodic little piece with Widow's Lament. You've got Razor Sharp, A Welcome Hearth. You've got some good stuff and a great cover. Absolutely brilliant album cover. Fortunately, I've had to dig out the lights there, so I don't know if there's any glare. Hopefully it's not too bad, but cracking art. Absolutely love it. And there's our lineup. Cool stuff. So we've got more heavy metal with Morgul Blade. Definitely one to check out. I've been enjoying that, although not too familiar with it just yet. So let's go for the black metal then. An album that when it came out, I must admit I was a bit slow to get into it. However, I absolutely love this band, and through the years that's been this album rather has been out, I've been getting more and more familiar with it. Probably see already. I am talking about the mighty Cradle of Filth with Existence is Futile. Now this album, as I say, when it came out, there was quite a lot of hype about it. It was released in 2021 through Nuclear Blast. This is an Undying Music reissue on tape, so it's all official good stuff. Bizarre cover, very gothic, very evil, as is the way with the majority of what Cradle of Filth do, of course. But there was a lot of talk about this album, a lot of rumblings, and it is a great album. But I think for reasons unknown or just concentrating on other bands, other releases, didn't really get to grips with this one for quite a while. But like I say, over time, I've revisited it periodically and then saw it on tape and thought, you know what, I'm going to really commit to it now. I'm going to pick this up, I'm going to give it a good blast, and I'm blooming glad that I did, because it's a great album. I feel that this is particularly bleak, and that's saying something for Cradle of Filth. This feels like a really bleak, emotive workout, actually. But there's some brilliant tracks here. Existential Terror, Necromantic Fantasies, another great one. To be honest, just throughout the whole album, but Crawling King Chaos is brilliant. How Many Tears to Nurture a Rose, fantastic. Very bleak, very gothic. Danny Filth and the Gang. I know that since this album, there's been quite a few public changes. You know, they've had their comings and goings with lineups, but all that aside, Cradle of Filth are such a brilliant band. So many cracking albums in their discography, just masters of their art. If you're not familiar with Cradle, definitely check them out. And this is as good an album to check out, as good an album to start with as any. Existence is Futile. Absolutely brilliant. And I'd certainly recommend checking out their newest album, Scream of the Valkyries, which is just sublime. So we've got some heavy, we've got some black metal, well, more gothic symphonic black metal. Let's go death metal, and let's go with a band that I have been steadily piecing together their discography. Although I've got it all on CD and many of the albums on vinyl, been piecing together their full discography on tape. Now I've only got one album which I'm missing. I just want to make sure I get this in the right chronological order. We're talking New York death metal powerhouse, Suffocation. So, this album is Souls to Deny. Again, this is one that I've only picked up fairly recently. I don't know, within the last year or couple of years. I forget. On CD. Just picked up courtesy of Megatherion Records. So they've done the tape reissue. It's originally on Relapse. And they've done so many great albums. They've made so many great albums available. Albums that have been long out of print. So we've got all those Dying Fetus albums, for example. We've got loads of Suffocation albums. We've got Deicide as well. I've talked about this label and their other releases recently because they've got loads of cool stuff. But this album is a really good one. It's not one of my absolute favourite Suffocation albums, but I think the Suffocation are one of those bands that they're actually really quite consistent. You know, they don't deviate from their Suffocation formula a huge amount. And this album is one of those moments where it's still absolutely reliable, solid, thoroughly enjoyable Suffocation. But because of albums that have come subsequently, or even just because of those legendary first three albums, certainly the first and third, is almost a little bit kind of dwarfed. And actually, their more recent albums, in my opinion, have been absolutely sublime. But Souls to Deny, an absolute beast Frank Mullen. We got Mike Smith, an absolute drum pro. Love his drumming on this album. Terence Hobbs and Guy Marcus. Yeah, absolutely fantastic. This is technical, kind of progressive flair, brutal death metal, and it freaking absolutely, yeah, gets you going, gets your head banging for sure. Brilliant tracks here with Deceit into To Weep Once More. Title track is brilliant. Demise of the Clone is fantastic. Immortality Condemned, just brilliant. Absolutely fantastic. So a real nice one. If you can pick that up, then absolutely do. The album that I do ever so slightly prefer, I must admit, is the follow-up album. For that was 2004. This is 2006. The self-titled album. This is a beast. This is an absolute beast. Again, picked it up not too long ago, within the same sort of time scale, 1 to 2 years, or yeah, at most, on CD. But it's a great album. It's really heavy. I'd say this is more of a bludgeoning than Souls to Deny, but it packs a mighty, mighty punch. So still got Mike absolutely crushing the kit, alongside Derek Boyer on bass, who is just an absolute expert. Mullen on vocals, Guy Marcus on guitars, alongside Terence Hobbs. Fold that out. Nice inserts. So the Megatherion tapes are always of a good quality. They've always got nice inserts, good art, you know, it's good quality stuff. Freaking good. Nice, plain, simple black tape shell there, but again, some cracking tracks here. Abomination Reborn, Redemption, Bind, Torture, Kill, Translucent Patterns of Delirium, Creed of the Infidel, just the whole album. Entrails of You, Prelude to Repulsion. Great, love it. Absolutely brilliant. Good flow here. It's a solid, absolute pounding. If you like death metal, particularly brutal death metal with very technical, progressive flares in there, Suffocation are a band you absolutely need to hear. Sadly, I've never actually been able to catch them live. The 2 times I was supposed to. First time at Colchester Arts Centre, the show was cancelled. Second time was Incineration Fest in London a couple of years ago. Couldn't get anywhere near the venue from the queues, unfortunately. So ended up waiting out until Enslaved came on. But anyway, 2 brilliant albums from Suffocation, Soul to Deny and the self-titled. Okay, sticking with Megatherion then. As I mentioned, they've done a lot of the Deicide releases, reissuing them on tape, and they have now done album number 4, Serpents of the Light. This album, released in 1997, in my opinion, is a bit of an underrated gem. Those first 3 albums, there's no competing with them. You know, self-titled, Legion, and Once Upon the Cross. That's pretty much, for a lot of people, Deicide fans, that's all they need. You know, it's top tier stuff, and it absolutely is. But I would also say that those subsequent albums, there's no bad Deicide albums. They're just struggling to kind of compete with the brilliance of those first 3. Just like Suffocation, you know, their albums are all great, but they're just maybe dwarfed by the brilliance of their early catalogue. And Serpents of the Light, I think, has a little bit of a murkier production sound as well. It's still, if memory serves, I don't think it says here. It's engineered, mixed, and produced by Scott Burns. So it's still a Morrisound Studios album, but I think they went for a slightly different sound. I have read all about it in the past, but it has a little bit of a different sound, not quite as Morrisound Studios sounding as the predecessors. But we've got some great tracks here. The title is great. Bastards of Christ, Blame It on God is a highlight. This is Hell We're In, Creatures of Habit, Truth Above, and Father Bakers. Brilliant. Again, Megatherion have done a great job with this one. It's a short and sweet, old school Florida death metal rampage. You know, Deicide, they're freaking kings. Glenn Benton and company absolutely deliver the goods. So an underrated gem and a great little cassette issue to have. Serpents of the Light. Okay, let's stick with US death metal then for a debut, another New York legendary band. We've got Pyrexia with Sermons of Mockery, and again a Megatherion, originally Century Media. So there's a lot of crossover with Suffocation, with common members certainly in the early days. But they're quite a similar band, but they're also a brilliant band. You know, they have that kind of brutal and technical thing going on there. They're just really solid, actually. I did have a CD copy of this years ago. I don't know what on earth I did with it. I either lost it somewhere in the abyss of the collection here, or maybe I sold it. But it's a great one to revisit on tape. It's a really solid, brutal album. When you're looking for something fast and furious, merciless onslaught death metal, this is one to go for. Sermons of Mockery, like I say, short and sweet. It's barely half an hour long, I believe. Title track is brilliant. Abomination, God, Demigod, Inhumanity, Liturgy of Impurity. It's great. It's great stuff. Freaking heavy hitting. Oh, but it's got that old school vibe. Definitely has an old school feel to it. So Pyrexia, Sermon of Mockery. Okay, so we're done with the States now. We're going over to Europe. We're going to the European shores for a bit of a one-off. I don't believe that there is any plans to resurrect this one either. We're going with Pyamia, Cerebral Serial, the one and only album from this legendary band. I can't quite recall where they are. I think they might be Dutch. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but this is a short-lived kind of band. I know there was common members with Disavowed, another sort of legendary death metal band, but sadly put on hold due to, I think it was health reasons actually, and the band never quite came back to this one. But this is a recent reissue. Again, had a CD copy of this and it's somewhere. But this is a recent reissue through Dissonant Tapes themselves, actually. So this is one of their own reissues. And it's a cracking album. It's actually a really good album. It's got a real murkiness. It's death metal. It's old school. Packed full of groove. You know, think Pyrexia. Think Suffocation, even. You know, think of that early stuff, but with tons of groove. That's laying the foundation for brutal death metal. Can't quite recall the year or original year of release for this one. I think it was 2000 or 2001, more likely. But this is cracking stuff. This is cracking stuff. Real low end gutturals, killer chugging riffs. It's a real chuggy album. Cool kind of clear pink shell as well. Do like a nice clear pink shell. Always welcome. And yeah, it's just a solid album. Again, not very long at all. Barely 30 minutes, I believe. But it's just good, wholesome, brutal death. We've got Gorging on Mucus and Bile. Oh, Sugar Spiced Anus, of course. The title track, Impaled on Stakes. Cranial Blowout is a great one. Malodorous Rancidity. Blood Spewed on My Face. Everlasting Torture. Great. This is death metal. Guaranteed to satisfy Suffocation fans, Dying Fetus fans, Cannibal Corpse fans, and all the other good stuff, you know, festering away in the underground. Pyamia, Cerebral Serial. Okay, this one is a bit of a similar sort of story. The band's actually long defunct now. I think they split up shortly after this album was released. But this was more of a supergroup. A supergroup that I particularly loved. So with common members of Asphyx and Thanatos and numerous others, we got Hail of Bullets with the final album that was released in 2013. This is the Rommel Chronicles. So Hail of Bullets was an old school death metal band, thematically based on the Second World War. So the first album followed the horrors of the Ostfront, the Eastern Front. Second album, the horrors of the Pacific Campaign. And third album, actually chronicling the career of Rommel, Field Marshal Erwin Rommel. So for the history buffs like myself, this is enjoyable in numerous ways. But also, if you're just looking for some absolutely killer death metal, very much in the vein of Asphyx, of Grand Supreme Bloodcourt, Grave, early Entombed, that kind of stuff, you're gonna dig this. It is absolutely cracking. Martin Van Drunen on vocals, say no more. Absolutely love Martin's vocals. Absolutely brilliant frontman and vocalist. Just show our lineup shot there again. But this is a release through Flogger Records, and it's great. It's a brilliant one. Just a black shell, but Hail of Bullets is such a great band. I think that there was, I don't know, personal differences between members, relationships broke down, and the whole band broke down eventually. I know that before they did split, Martin was out of the band and was replaced by none other than Dave Ingram from Benediction and countless scores of other bands, of course. That guy has been in so many side projects and spin-offs, but he's got such a great vocal style. He's got such a great death metal vocal approach there. Absolute legend, but I do personally love Van Drunen's vocals. But this album's absolutely brilliant. Like I say, top-notch stuff here. Swoop of the Falcon. I think it's DG7. We've got Dak, Desert Fox, To Brook, The Final Front, Death of a Field Marshal. Absolutely fantastic. If you like Asphyx, you are absolutely guaranteed to really dig Hail of Bullets. Incredible stuff. So, Hail of Bullets with the Rommel Chronicles. Okay, so let's go with another classic now. I believe this is the second album from the mighty Unleashed. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but I believe this is the second and the third is Across the Sea. Just trying to remember that. But Unleashed, I absolutely love this band. This is Shadows in the Deep. If you have been following the channel, may have seen the previous tape collection update. I was showing off a tape version, again, an Undying Music tape reissue of the debut, the all-important Where No Life Dwells debut. Couldn't resist picking up the second album as well. I love those first few. To be honest, I love all of Unleashed's albums. They're just such a brilliant old-school death metal band. But I love those first few albums. In fact, so much so that I've now got Shadows and Where No Life Dwells on tape, CD, and vinyl. So that's showing my dedication. Cracking album. Absolutely brilliant. It's notable for more than just having the Countess Bathory Venom cover. We've got some absolutely brilliant stuff. The Final Silence, The Immortals, Shadows in the Deep, Neverending Hate, Crush the Skull, Bloodbath, Land of Ice. It's just fantastic. Absolutely brilliant. Originally through Century Media in 1992. Undying Music reissue in 2015. But Undying do a really good job as well. Nice inserts there. Nice printed shell. And this is a classic. Essential for fans of the good old Scandinavian death metal scene. You know, if you like Entombed, if you like Dismember, that kind of stuff, then Unleashed. Frickin' hell, need to check it out. I've always felt that Johnny and Unleashed kind of had more of a thrashing style as well. It's a little bit more kind of maybe influenced from some of the US death metal bands like Obituary, where they're kind of a little bit more of a thrashier sound. Don't know. Maybe that's just my ears. But the legendary Unleashed with Shadows in the Deep. One last article then. This is actually a new album. Knock over my little stack there. This is actually a new album from 2025 from Copenhagen, Denmark's very own up-and-coming death doom dealers, the absolutely brilliant Frenlith. If that is how it's pronounced, that's certainly how it is spelt. Frenlith, this is Ashen 2. I believe this is album number 3. Forgive me if I'm wrong. We've got a nice orange tape shell there. And these are great musicians. This is a great band. This is very much death doom. It's very murky. You know, it really does bring grave miasma, spectral voice, that kind of stuff to mind. It's very dark, heavy stuff. When they're being fast, you know, they are faster, but there's plenty of dirge here. you know, if you love all the old school greats, bands like Incantation, for example, or Autopsy, you're still going to find a lot to appreciate here. But they are doing something pretty reinvigorating with this old school style. Great musicians, great players, great songwriters. The whole thing is really good. To be honest, the whole album just flows pretty seamlessly. Not really that much need to pick out individual tracks as such, but the whole thing just delivers. It's absolutely brilliant. I freaking love it, start to finish. Ashen Womb, a brilliant one. The previous albums have both been really solid as well, and there's also other bits and pieces. So there are bands you need to hear if you haven't checked out Frenlith already. Cracking artwork there from one of the best modern death metal bands emerging from the scene. They seem to be gaining momentum and gaining a lot of notoriety as well. So totally justified, but it's a band to look out for. So we've got Frenlith with Ashen Womb. So there we have it. A run through of my recently acquired tapes, or not that recently, a few months ago, but I've been steadily working through the stack, getting more familiar with them. I like to be able to actually talk about the albums a bit, of course, but we've got Visigoth with the Reverend King. Brilliant one if you love epic heavy metal. Same with Morgul Blade, Heavy Metal Wraiths, which is cracking. Then we've got Cradle of Filth, the brilliant Cradle of Filth with Existence is Futile. Then we had, got it in the wrong order now, but we had Hail of Bullets with the Rommel Chronicles. Unleashed with Shadows in the Deep. Then we've got two excellent Suffocation albums. Souls to Deny. I feel like maybe I was being a bit harsh on that one. It is a great album. And the self-titled, the follow-up. Then we've got Deicide, Serpents of the Light. We've got Pyrexia with Sermon of Mockery. Not to be confused with Pyaemia with Cerebral Serial. And last, but very much not least, Frenlith with Ashen Womb. So my friends, you can definitely head over to Dissonant Tapes and guarantee you're going to pick up some awesome stuff. But what are your thoughts and opinions on these bands, on these albums? Are you a fan? Are you not? Let me know your thoughts and opinions on these ones. Thank you very much for watching this humble collection update. Hope you've enjoyed it. Please do feel free to like, subscribe, share, comment. The support is greatly appreciated as always. Do check back soon for more reviews and recommendations of all those good heavy things. Until next time, take care of yourselves, my friends. Listen to tape, only tape is real, and stay freaking heavy.